All right. I think we're live, but I'm just gonna give it a couple seconds and make sure that we are good to go. And I'll go ahead and push us out live here. All right, perfect. We are live. Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome back to another live video with Boys Town. My name is Gabby. I am your host, joined here with two wonderful experts, and we are going to be discussing how to parent a child with ADHD. So to my right here in the middle, we're joined here with Chris from the Behavioral Health Center. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you so much. How are
Awesome.
you?
We're doing good. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role at Boys Town.
Yeah, I am at the Center for Behavioral Health. I've been here going on 2 years. I did my internship here, and this year I'm doing my postdoctoral fellowship, focusing this year on assessment. And so doing diagnosis and stuff like that.
Wonderful. And then we also have Bridget Barnes, our common sense parenting expert. Bridget, how are you?
I'm great, Gabby. Thanks for asking. I'm super excited about today's topic on ADHD as a mom and as a person working with parents in our Boys Town Common Sense parenting classes here. And I'm the director for that program. And have been for over 30 years. So always looking for new tips that Chris and the other specialists at the Behavioral Health Clinic can provide for us.
Wonderful. So as we go through our live discussion today, if you have any questions for Chris or Bridget on the topic of ADHD, go ahead and leave them in the comment section, and we'll leave a little bit of time for a Q&A. All right, so the first question for you, Chris, is what are the signs of ADHD in children?
That's a good place to start. So ADHD is it's been around for a while. We've heard a lot about it. It comes up in social media, comes up in pretty much everywhere. But really what we're looking at with signs or symptoms of ADHD are focused in three areas: inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. So with inattentiveness, we're looking at behavior such as being easily distracted, forgetful, struggling to follow through on tasks, and things like that. With hyperactivity, we're looking at fidgeting, restlessness, difficulty staying seated. And then with impulsivity, this is sort of looks like acting without thinking, speaking without thinking, interrupting others, blurting out answers, difficulty waiting turns. So kids may also struggle with additional things that aren't symptoms but are associated features of ADHD. Things such as struggling to regulate emotions, being irritable, reacting intensely in certain situations where that might not be needed or expected. They may also have trouble picking up on social cues or acting appropriately in social interactions. They may be particularly sensitive to rejection from others or by others. They may also exaggerate their level of competence or skills, which is a phenomenon known as positive illusory bias. Uh, One of the biggest things is, as we look at symptoms or signs, is it's really crucial to look for patterns of behavior that are really inconsistent with the child's developmental level, uh, and that these behaviors or symptoms or signs interfere with sort of the daily functioning of their life.
Bridget, would you add anything?
Well, I was just going to ask Chris because I'm really interested. I've seen some research and, on signs between boys and girls. Boys have been definitely researched a lot for this particular disorder. But, is there any difference, or is it pretty much the same regardless of the child's gender?
One of the things, and great question, Bridget. One of the things that we really see is there's not necessarily an inherent sort of difference between genders on how ADHD looks. We're still dealing with those same sets of symptoms. impulsivity, inattentiveness, and hyperactivity. What may be sort of attributed here is hyperactivity is typically associated more with younger boys. And again, with hyperactivity, if we're talking about like a 5-year-old and sitting in a school class, they're going to look pretty much the same as other kids in their class, because pretty much all 5-year-olds are going to be hyperactive if they're sitting in a class. As far as specific gender differences, again, some of that is socially based, what behaviors are expected, what are allowed, what are even encouraged for boys versus for girls. And a lot of the history of ADHD has predominantly been highlighted in boys because of that. Well, boys are just, they're going to be more wild and rambunctious. And then it turns into, hey, this is a little extreme, so maybe this is something else. Whereas girls, there may be hyperactivity, but it takes a lot of sort of, wow, that's really extreme. There must be something going on, instead of maybe this typical hyperactivity is actually ADHD and just not aware of that.
Right. Great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So if we're a parent watching and, you named some of those signs and symptoms and they're thinking to themselves, yeah, I think my child is experiencing some of that. What steps should we take first if we think our child has ADHD?
So for parents, one of the best resources, if wanting to get sort of the ball rolling, if we're, if we think there may be ADHD, if we're seeing all of that, pediatricians, primary care providers will really be the first sort of line of information on that. Pediatricians are really helpful and effective at screening for ADHD. And typically, whenever a referral comes from a pediatrician about ADHD, they've already done sort of the groundwork, and we may look at possible treatment later that the pediatrician will be involved in. And so parents collaborating with pediatricians with, hey, saying things like, I see this in my kid, I am concerned, what should I do? Pediatricians are really good at helping that process and helping sort of answer parents' questions. And so one of the recommendations would be for parents is to bring all of your questions and curiosities and concerns to your child's doctor and kind of see where they go from there, what they might recommend. So that's sort of like the first step. The second step would be, there may be some school-related collaboration that may need to take place. So teachers are also a great form of information or funnel of information. They're with your child many hours of the day, and they see your child in a setting that is typically where these behaviors might pop out and become concerning. And so working with your child's teacher, home, and then kind of the last thing is, your hunch is pretty good. You're the parent, you're the expert on your child and your family. And so, if you feel like there is something there, it doesn't hurt to ask. And so kind of taking that first step, pediatrician, teacher, and then whatever the next steps after that might be.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We are streaming this chat on our Boys Town Pediatrics pages, both on Instagram, X, Twitter, and our Facebook page. So, if you are a patient at Boys Town Pediatrics, or if you're looking to become one, just as Chris said, we have several pediatricians that are great resources to look into this further for you.
Yeah, Chris, I was going to say that My son, I thought he had ADHD. I went through those processes, and yes, the pediatrician was a great screening, in case you were thinking things were wrong, and there was nothing wrong. It could be something else that's going on with your child. So definitely get any physical things out of the way, and getting that school support specialist on board was helpful. I also talked to my mom, like, he's doing this behavior, and she's like, yeah, so your brother did this or your uncle did that. And I saw this trend going on in my family as well. So that was kind of helpful too.
Definitely.
That kind of sparks a question for me. Can ADHD run in a family? Is it genetic?
So there have been a lot of studies that have looked at the sort of the genetic heritability of ADHD. What we do know is it is genetically heritable. What we don't know is sort of what gene or what. I'm not a genetic scientist here, so I don't know exactly what the lingo for that would be, but we don't know what that sort of marker is, but we do know that it is genetically inherited, and the chances or likelihood of developing ADHD increases when one or both parents also have ADHD. I'm not 100% sure on the exact statistic of that, but I think it's somewhere around 50% chance if one parent has it, and 100% chance if both parents have it. And so yes, it is genetically heritable.
Okay, yeah, good to know. So Bridget, you mentioned screening. What are the criteria? I guess Chris, you can answer this as well, for diagnosing a child with ADHD. And Bridget, if you want to talk a little bit more about your experience with your son too, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Chris. We want to hear the criteria.
All right, thank you. So really, when we're considering an ADHD diagnosis, perhaps we receive a referral from a pediatrician to do a more extensive, comprehensive evaluation. Really, what we're looking at there's multiple things. The first thing is that list of symptoms, behaviors, the signs that we can sort of check off. Fidgeting, not sitting still, forgetfulness, not paying attention, things like that. So we go through that list and basically check those off, and we ask questions about what does that look like in each context. And then after that, we sort of look at 3 different points of evidence. First one is, are these behaviors causing a problem? So we know that symptoms have to cause a significant level of impairment across social, academic, and at times occupational functioning. So if these behaviors are actually causing some sort of difficulty in your child succeeding at school, getting along with peers, conflict at home, doing the tasks that need to be done, then that's an important thing to look at. Next, are these behaviors seen across 2 or more settings? So if you're just seeing behaviors at home, but teachers not seeing anything at school, other relatives don't see anything, neighbors don't see anything, chances are it would be a hard stretch for an ADHD diagnosis with that. What we really are looking for is, are these behaviors happening across the board, everywhere, at school, at home, at church, wherever it may be. And so having those 2 is sort of a foundation. We kind of need that really to move forward. And then the last thing is for this is, have these behaviors always been there? Has there been a history of these behaviors from pretty early on? Again, the point I made earlier about hyperactivity, sort of separating that from normal sort of young child, high level of energy and significant impairing hyperactivity tends to be a little more difficult. And so that's why one of the criteria is typically we're not going to diagnose ADHD until at least 5 or 6 years old. Kids younger than that, it's almost impossible to determine whether or not these behaviors are actually happening. There's no multiple settings typically, and the history is just not there. And so one of the last things to kind of consider is, are there any other possible causes for the symptoms? And if there are, those should be ruled out as well.
Yeah, those are great points. Severity, frequency, the environment, and the impact definitely were things that we were looking for in my son because, other things could be causing that. And children fall kind of on a spectrum, of severity of this disorder. Is like my son didn't have a lot of the things that were going on, and he had some of these things, so it was kind of a mixed bag. So to get to school and all on board to say, okay, we're seeing something here and what can we do about it, and are meds necessary or not, and things like that. So that kind of falls into that question of treatment when you look at what is the diagnosis and where is this kid falling in regards to this particular disorder. But I just want to say to a lot of parents, because you get this diagnosis and you think, oh my gosh, what does this mean? And I didn't expect to be here. Am I prepared to deal with this? And it is not like this terrible sentence. This is a child with a different way of seeing things. And in many cases, a brilliance that we haven't really discovered yet. There's really a lot of great things, a lot of great people who have this disorder are and do well in the world, right? And so I don't want parents who are looking at this to think, oh my gosh, this could be, a bad situation. Definitely, it can be a challenge for you and your child, but it doesn't have to be the end of things. It can be a beginning of something else and how we look at it as well.
Yes, that's a great outlook. And we'll go into later on in this discussion some ways to best parent your child, and when you are in those situations where you might be feeling a little overwhelmed by it, just as Bridget said, that it is not the end of the world, and with experts like these we will get through it together. So great insight, Bridget. That kind of leads us right into our next question, and that is about treatment. So does ADHD need to be treated, and what does that process look like? Chris?
So I think that's a complicated question, in that we're looking, again, like Bridget said, it's a spectrum of severity. And so if we are on the more severe end, maybe there is a higher level of care or treatment that is required, versus if we're on the lower end of that spectrum, not as severe, maybe just some teaching to some of that at home may be enough. So basically, when we talk about treatment for ADHD, it really boils down to skills-based behavior therapy. So teaching skills, teaching how to regulate, how to control your behaviors, how to control and not act on urges or impulses, skills, social skill development, and learning how to organize and manage time, some executive skill stuff. And that's sort of like falls into the box of behavior therapy for ADHD. Psychoeducation is part of that. So we do a lot of, teaching parents how to better manage their child's behavior, help them manage their behavior, psychoeducation about, brain chemistry, how ADHD works, what it looks like. And then in most cases, medication is also a first line treatment for ADHD. So much like depression, in ADHD, there's an imbalance of certain brain chemicals such as dopamine and norepinephrine, and those chemicals are what affect attention and impulse control, for example. And so medications such as Adderall, Ritalin, which are stimulants, or Strattera, which is like a non-stimulant, and that list is so long, it would take forever to go through all of those. Those may be prescribed if the need is there for, you know, you know, able to pay attention and not be so, you know, all over the place. Do the tasks that are required to get through life. So the symptoms we talked about are not as impairing when there is medication that is controlling those brain chemicals. So one of the things that I really want parents to know when I work with them is, while medications may be effective, and they can be, and most often times they are, they do work differently for each person. And it's really important for parents to work with the prescribing doctor to get the right fit for those medications. And so there's a lot of regular monitoring of, you know, side effects, and if there's adjustments, then though if those are needed, then that can happen within the treatment plan if that's necessary.
So, Chris, I was wondering, do you feel like that, medication is in combination or should go with, an intervention, a treatment, all those things that you talked about? It's just not one thing or another. It is kind of this combination of, behavior management as well as medication, so that parents, maybe some kids over time, can reduce the amount of medication that they're on because they're better able to manage those behaviors over time, and that parents have to give medication time. Sometimes I have them in our classes and they're, like, this is not working, Bridget, we're going to stop. And I'm like, no, you need to work with your doctor. It takes a while for chemistry to work in your body. But at the same time, you have to be putting in the teaching and the management, so those medications can, stop the behavior, but now you have to teach to the behavior so kids have those skills. Do you agree with that kind of thinking there, Chris?
100%. Yes. I do think medication is not the end all be all. But like you said, well put with that. Can't just take medication and expect everything to be perfect. There definitely has to be skills that have to be in place so that the medication can do its job. And then eventually, if needed, then that can be tapered off to, or even taken away completely so those skills can be used.
Yeah, leads us right into the next question is, what skills are those, and what can we do as parents to help our kids with ADHD, whether it be Bridget from a parenting standpoint, or Chris, from what you see in the clinics? What can parents do on their end?
Well, on our end, we just try to teach parents how to reduce distractions, and teach kids how to reduce distraction by learning how to focus a little bit. Even when you get a child's attention, getting their attention before you start talking. Don't talk from another room or as you're walking by a child with ADHD, but try to reduce distractions and teach children to do that. Stay calm so you can teach your child to be calm. You can't say, do as I say and not as I do. So parents need to really invest in learning how to stay calm themselves so they can teach by example. Limiting those choices helps a child not feel overwhelmed. So it encourages them, again, to focus, which is something that they struggle with. Encouraging them to show that you believe in them, that that helps them to reduce that self-doubt, because I'm praising you for the small or large or whatever kind of accomplishments you're making, versus finding what you're doing wrong every minute. And they're doing a lot of behavior, so you have to look for the good, right? And then, of course, just helping kids learn that they can help themselves by learning those social skills that Chris mentioned earlier. True investment in teaching kids the step-by-step approach to handling different problems. I can't say enough about parents getting help. Lots of times as parents, I have a child with autism, my stepson, and then another child deals with depression, and then my son who has ADHD. I have to say that, you get so busy wanting to help the child that sometimes you forget to help yourself. You can't help your child if you're kind of, just flailing around and just really overwhelmed. So I really suggest to parents to get in a group. There's a chat group nationwide There's groups that you can talk to your pediatrician or to the school counselor about. Get with someone and talk to someone, because you have needs too. You have to get help so you can help your kids.
Definitely support what Bridget just said. Self-care for parents is incredibly important. It's hard to help your child if you are running on low fumes. And kids with ADHD can be incredibly difficult and exhausting, and also some of the most creative and fun and goofy kids out there. Um, Two of the things that I would just point out real quick is consistency and routine. So the more consistent parents can be in expectations and structured environments, activities, clear set rules are going to go so far. Your kids might not always follow those expectations or rules, and that's just has to be, take that in stride. But they will definitely thrive, or be more likely to thrive, when there are consistent expectations and they know what those are. And then if they know what to expect, they're not going to struggle when, it's time to transition, or when it's time to, get off their gaming system to come eat dinner or do their homework, because they know that is what's expected. And then just, so it's a lot of things we do here, sort of the bread and butter of the work that we do is using positive reinforcement and rewards for the positive, good behaviors that we want to see. Um, Kids love rewards, and they'll be more likely to do the behaviors you want if they are rewarded. And so just keeping that as sort of in your back pocket as a tool, uh, and setting up that system at home can be definitely helpful for kids with ADHD.
Yeah, and I tell parents all the time, you don't have to go out and buy something every time a child makes a movement, because children with ADHD have high frequency behavior. So you want to invest in things that cost no money, and you'll be surprised what kids want. Just ask them. I would have my son write down stuff, and he'd be writing like he's writing a Christmas list. Okay, and the things that were on there were just regular stuff that you want to do: watch television, play, things like that, and that can be great motivators for kids. And that great opportunity for you to invest in what they're doing well and tell them so through that positive reinforcement that Chris is talking about. I really think it's important that parents and a family just practice, looking at what red flags that might cause some stress in the family, and then focusing on learning how to control their emotions. We have these great little kits here. And it has like a 10-minute, just take a break, and it just goes up on the refrigerator, and just take a break. Sometimes when your child's behavior gets really out of control, being able to be mindful of yourself and your coping skills is very, very important, so that you can help them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the tool Bridget just showed is our Calm Down Kit, so we'll make sure to link that in the comments. I know the video is kind of narrow here, so it might not be super easy to see, but we will link it, and it's a free resource from parenting.org, so we'll put that, and you can check that out after this video. And, when we do see those red flags at home, and when, times get stressful at home, especially while parenting a child with ADHD, Chris, how can we as a family practice coping skills together?
I think it's really important that there be sort of this understanding that it's not just you and your problem. There's something wrong with you. It's, hey, you're struggling with this, and we're struggling right along with you with what you're struggling with. And so some coping, strategies that families can easily do. We can do some, family meditation, family relaxation skills. Hey, we're all going to, sit down and take 5 minutes to just be mindful in this present moment, and we're going to focus on our breathing instead of focusing on, hey, you need to calm down, go to your room, go do that somewhere else. And then one of the biggest things that I think is really important for parents of kids with ADHD is to not match their sort of emotional extremes. When kids with ADHD become flooded emotionally, there is no reasoning that's going to happen. And the same can be said for anybody who is flooded. Rational thought is not going to happen. And so talking at your child, giving them instructions, telling them to calm down, it's just not going to work, especially if and when you're yelling at them while you're saying those things. And so remaining a consistent, neutral tone when you are talking to them. Physical touch can be super helpful. Just assurance that, you're there, you love them, you don't have to say anything, you can just hold them. So incorporating all of that into the family, and then even, back to the rewards and consequences, all of the children in the family, if there are, can be involved in that. If there's a token system that's in place, all the kids can have a chance at earning rewards, not just the child with ADHD.
Bridget, would you add anything?
I think Chris covered everything there.
Yes.
Great point. Yeah.
How does ADHD affect my child at school? Chris, do you hear a lot in the clinic from what parents, teachers say? And
So
he might have
a little thing. So I want you to take a moment and imagine that you are at work and sitting in a boring but important meeting. Now imagine that you really have to use the restroom, but can't leave the meeting. A fly is buzzing around your face. Person next to you is chowing down on some corn nuts, and the phone of the person sitting across from you keeps noisily vibrating on the table. Putting all that together, this is pretty similar to what kids with ADHD experience at school on a daily basis. They're sitting in a classroom and it's boring. They're not doing what they want to be doing. And they are expected to sit still, be quiet, and focus on what the teacher is teaching, which is understandable. Yet at the same time, kids with ADHD struggle with all of those things. And so being at school presents an incredibly difficult situation for kids. And a lot of that spills over into home. So if there are academic difficulties, kids struggling with, keeping up with coursework because of forgetfulness or not able to follow instructions, so they can't complete their assignments. Restlessness makes it difficult to sit still in class. And we're talking, preschool to college, right? Like all of the grades, this is definitely an issue. When we're talking about impulsivity, that might lead to blurting out answers or, causing distractions or disruptions to the class. Organizing materials, remembering homework can be a daily challenge, which then also has a negative effect on their overall performance. So one of the biggest things is we really want to focus on the collaborative relationship between parents and their schools, teachers specifically. When teachers and parents are on the same page with the kids with ADHD, there's going to be effective and individualized education plans, IEP. There's going to be accommodations or services. So special education is one thing. Section 504 also has services. So if that's something later that you'd like to learn about, like definitely something to consider. Those can be implemented to support the academic needs of students. Some of those supports or accommodations can be, extra time on tests or, taking a break and taking a walk around the halls, going to a cool down room, being able to sit closer to the front of the room, being able to have manipulatives or fidget toys, for example, to be able to keep hands busy. So there's a wide variety of services and supports that can happen through the schools. At the end of the day, there definitely needs to be ongoing conversations with parents between them and their child's teachers.
Yeah, parents say all the things that Chris just mentioned in our class is about what's going on with their kids in school. Something else that the kids with ADHD struggle with is genuine friendships, being able to, they're sometimes isolated by other children, sometimes even teachers. So it is important for parents to take that into account and teach children how to make friends, how to learn how to listen, not want it their way, because sometimes with this disorder they can want it their way, and kind of manage their behavior. So learning how to communicate with other kids is important so that they can make genuine friendships. Um, Also, I think that just really teaching kids how to transition. Sometimes I hear children with this ADHD going from one activity or one class to the next. It can really create some behavioral problems for them, just transitioning. And that can be a difficult thing for them. Homework. Hello, homework. My son's backpack looked like something blew up in it. I was like, okay. And so just organizing that and dealing with homework was something that we really had to deal with. I think, for my son, he went to school kind of year round, because if I would let him be off for the entire summer, he would forget everything he knew by the fall, and we'd be starting all over again. And so it wasn't, really difficult. It was a great tutorials and school things and libraries and things like that. So it wasn't really a drudgery during the summer months, and he did have some time off, but definitely he pretty much went to school year round just to keep his skill set up. And that was just something for him. But every kid is a little bit different. Some kids with ADHD do very well in school, according to some of the parents that I've worked with.
Yeah, you mentioned friendships too, which made me think too, like sports. Is it hard for kids with ADHD to participate in organized sports?
Well, for some kids with ADHD, if they're in a sport where the coach is giving them direct instruction, then it's a little less difficult than maybe if they're in a sport where there's a direction to the entire group. They can get a little confused about what they're supposed to be doing. Also, some kids who excel at a sport but are struggling in school will lose their sporting ability because their grades are not up to par, and our parents are saying, I'm going to not let him go out for this because he's not doing well here. And I'm like, he's really not going to school for math, he's going to school for the football, but let's use that to encourage him to do better in math. And so I think that it really is a balance. Some kids do really great with sports. Some kids with this disorder are kind of a little bit more clumsy or struggling with their coordination. So parents kind of just have to be in tune and see where the kid is and utilize that particular sport event to encourage them with their education and with their ability to make friends and be part of their school experience.
Chris, would you add anything?
I was just thinking of highlighting what Bridget just said about sports being a prime opportunity for kids to practice their social skills. Teamwork, collaboration, communication are all important playing sports. And so, if anything, that would be a great opportunity for those skills to be developed in a controlled environment, if you will. And then, it also boosts their self-esteem. Maybe they make a shot and they score. All their teammates are going to be cheering them on. People on the stands are going to be cheering them on. And, that's a boost to self-esteem. And I'm always about, the emotional well-being of kids with ADHD as being something, to encourage, to enhance, to move them away from sort of the inwards, I'm broken, I'm damaged, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, whatever those negative messages they might tell themselves.
Right.
We just have 2 more questions on our list for Chris and Bridget. So if you're watching live and you have a question for them, make sure you leave it in the comments. I already see a couple that we will get to here at the end before we conclude. So we talked about how important routines and consistency are. So Bridget, from all the families you've taught in our common sense parenting classes, what advice do you have for establishing and maintaining healthy family routines?
Well, I would say they're important. Like Chris was saying, it helps stabilize children. They know what's going to happen, and they feel a little bit more like there's some predictability. If you wake up in the morning, like whatever happens today is going on, and also provides that connection between themselves and the people around them, that they're a part of something bigger than themselves, and they have responsibilities as well. I love to make routines visual. So up on the refrigerator would be things you're supposed to do to clean the bathroom, or this is how you do that, in this step-by-step way of doing that. I think it's important that parents understand that they need to put a little transition time in whatever routine, that a kid might not jump right on it or get finished right when you think they should. So just put that into your time for doing whatever activity, homework, bedtime, whatever. There should be a little transition time in there, however much is needed for your kid. Understand that there's a river in a rhythm kind of thing approach going on to your routines, if I could say. What I mean by that is just sometimes your routines are flowing along like a river, everything's good, and then other times you need to get up on the shore, you need to get out of that because something else is happening. There's med issue, there's sleeping issue, some crisis has occurred, your kid is responding to that your routine will not go as planned. It's okay. That's okay. You'll get back to that once this crisis or once this situation has gotten under control. And so I kind of understand there will be hiccups in your routines. That's no reason to throw it out, but to say, okay, we need to handle this, and then we'll get back to that. What are your thoughts, Chris, on this point of routines and kids with ADHD?
I think that was well said, Bridget, and I appreciate that. One of the things that really pops out is this difficulty with transitions and how routines are sort of the antidote to that, especially if those routines are consistent. Setting timers
love those.
is really helpful. Hey, your kid is playing a video game. That video games are sort of for kids, you kind of get sucked in and can play for hours. And so if there's something that needs to be done, dinner time or whatever, hey, Johnny, you have 5 minutes until it's time for dinner. And then, set a timer at 2 minutes. Hey, Johnny, just to remind you, you got 2 minutes until dinner. And then the timer goes off, and instead of a big blow up, there may be a little bit of pushback just because, have to get off. But it's a little bit more fluid to be able to go. I would also just add, as part of your routine with kids with ADHD, is getting their attention and how to do that effectively. And I've seen a lot of different methods for this. One of the ones that it seems like it works the best is using physical touch with your child. So if you want to give them a direction or an instruction or want to tell them something, you can place your hand on their shoulder, on their cheek, get them like in touch with you. Eye contact, having them look at you in the eyes, distracting them away from whatever is going on that they're doing and the activity that they're engaging in, and then giving your instruction after that. What we don't want is, you being 2 rooms away and yelling at the top of your lungs, hey kid, I need you to wash the dishes and do this and do that. First of all, they're not going to listen because they can't even hear you. And they're distracted by what they're doing. And so to save yourselves some, emotional difficulty, when you come in and said, hey, you didn't do what I told you to do, just remember that you were 2 rooms away and they may not have heard you and they weren't paying attention to you because they were doing something else. So just kind of incorporating some of those little soft skills into your routine with them would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree about those timers though, Chris. I am like sold on timers because our kids have no sense of time, and so I would just definitely be putting that timer on all the time for my son, just to check back on things. He'd go to clean his room and something would fly by his face, or he'd get a comic book or whatever. And I'd have to put that timer on and say, hey, when this timer goes off, I need to see you back in front of me, whether you're done with your room or not. And, then he would, the timer would go off and he'd come back and say, well, I'm this far in the process. And so they just kept me in touch too, because I could forget 2 hours later. I wonder where that kid is in that room. So I believe in, creating that time factor for kids with this particular disorder, because they can lose track of time, definitely.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so one last question before we hop into our Q&A. Looks like we've got 4 questions in that, and that is, if I need more support with my child with ADHD, what help is available? Chris, if you want to talk about how to get looped in with the Behavioral Health Center.
Yeah, definitely. So here at the Behavioral Health Clinic, what we offer, the services we offer, are a valuable resource for families, especially families, when there are concerns such as ADHD. We have phenomenal therapists here who honestly specialize in working with parents to treat not just the behavioral symptoms, but also to look at any of the associated features, the social skills, the emotional dysregulation, maybe some family conflict that come with ADHD. And so along with that, we also offer comprehensive ADHD evaluations here, which provide parents and families with tangible and relevant recommendations, so that they can use those to then know next steps of, okay, now that we have this diagnosis, what do we do? Oh, here we go. We can manage this. It's bite-sized pieces, if you will. Overall, our clinic's commitment really focuses on and extends even beyond the immediate concerns of, hey, here's some bad behavior and we want to fix it. Instead, we really strive to help youth with ADHD and their families develop the skills that are necessary for them to thrive in their lives, and as well as developing enduring well-being and overall resilience so that they can carry that forward.
Great. And we also have parenting classes for parents of children with ADHD. And the really cool thing about being in a class is you're there with other parents and you don't feel all alone, and you're hearing stories that sound exactly like yours, and you're getting strategies that you can go home and actually try and then come back and tell someone, hey, that worked, or no, that didn't work, and we can tweak it to help you. We do pre and post tests, so parents will do a stress test and a parent skills test to see how well they're doing at the other end of that. So they really get to see themselves kind of evolve and to meet other parents and to find out what other supports are out there in the community for them as well.
Awesome. All right, well, let's hop into this Q&A quick while we still got a couple minutes. The first one is, how does diet affect ADHD? Chris, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that come to mind with that. One of the things is obviously, sugar, for example, is typically a stimulant in and of itself. It can lead to high energy levels, high activity levels. And so that on top of existing ADHD can sometimes, not always, but can sometimes exacerbate or make more severe some of the problems that are faced, as well as maybe some of the drop down from that. Really, we encourage a healthy diet of fruits, vegetables, getting all the necessary nutrients, especially through those developmental years as the brain is developing. We really want to focus on creating healthy pathways in the brain and doing that through eating healthy. And I will add, it wasn't about eating per se, but physical activity, having healthy avenues for that. Sports, for example, going outside and just running around before it's time to sit down, can be helpful to get off some of that energy. And then one of the things that's interesting. Caffeine is kind of a weird concept with ADHD. Not always, but a lot of times, caffeine can actually work as a stimulant medication for individuals with ADHD. So for people without ADHD, caffeine gives kind of like a buzz, and you get energy, and wow, it's great. For people with ADHD, it has sort of a dampening effect, like a focusing effect. Able to, okay, I can calm and chill here to be able to do what I need to. But again, not always. So again, we want to watch for overeating, impulsive eating, cookies, chips, sodas, juices are a lot of things that kids with ADHD kind of gravitate to, and really just kind of making sure that what they're consuming is overall healthy.
I agree wholeheartedly with Chris. You are what you eat. I don't care if your child has ADHD or not. And I think having children involved in meal prep and making their food and, peanut butter with the, celery or whatever the case may be, that when you get them involved, then that's how they begin to think and act and respond to food, right? And if they're going with you grocery shopping and, you're staying on the outside lanes versus in the middle of the grocery where all the processed stuff is at, you're going to find yourself making better choices. And I just always would tell my kids, right down the middle, half of this plate is going to be colorful. Okay. So if we do that, we should be in a safe place with your eating habits and just making them a part of it.
What about screen time? How does that influence children with ADHD?
They can stay on it forever because the picture's always changing. It's definitely a dopamine kind of play. People are reinforced, even people without ADHD, to that tube, right? And I just say, less is more in regards to that. Here in the U.S., we watch a lot of screens. We're constantly involved in screens, and I would just really say to have a no screen zone in my house where screens are not going to be at my dining room table or not going to be in certain places. Definitely, kids have to use them anymore with their schooling. It's kind of part of their world. That's out. I'm not going to put that Pandora back in the box. It's definitely something that kids should know how to regulate, know how to use that works for them versus against them.
Definitely echo that. Just a couple things with that. I think it would be important to set boundaries with screen time. Screen time isn't in and of itself a negative thing for kids. It's how much time we're using it and what we're consuming when we're using it, which speaks more to the impulsive part. Are we clicking on places where we shouldn't be clicking on that leads us to somewhere we should be? And then just managing time. So you can be on this screen for a half hour. We're going to set a timer. Here we go. Okay. Timer's up. Okay. Now maybe we can get back on. It's really easy for kids with ADHD and really anyone today to just get sucked in and to lose time, really. And it's a huge stimulator. And so what we want to avoid is screen time right before bed when we need sleep. So anywhere from a half hour to an hour before bed, kind of putting away screens and doing things that are more relaxing is helpful for sleep, especially with kids who may be on medication. When there may be sort of an insomnia effect of the medication, we don't want to extend that by keeping them on screens later and later. Now, I typically deal with that more in clinic with my older kids and teenagers. Younger kids, they're still pretty good with being able to get to sleep when they should. Getting them off the screens is a little bit trickier. But definitely, yeah, screen time needs to be managed and can be a healthy and helpful thing for a family aspect.
Our next question does pertain to those older kids diagnosed with ADHD. What are some strategies to get a teenager to accept help for ADHD, whether it's counseling or embracing those accommodations at school that we discussed?
That's a tricky question. Teenagers are tough. Doesn't matter what their diagnosis is or if they don't have one. Adolescence is really an age where they're pushing the limits of their autonomy, being able to independently do what they want within the sort of confines of their system. And so getting them to do things, asking them to do things, forcing them to do things are all very different. And at the end of the day, even if high levels of impulsivity, high levels of distractibility and attentiveness, if that gets in the way, they still have the right to make choices for themselves. And by that, I mean, it is a human right to think what we think, feel what we feel, and no one can control that within us. If we need them to do things like homework because they need to do well in school, incentivize it. Doing a reward system. Hey, if you can do X amount of assignments this week, you get X award or reward on Saturday. You can do this. You have this much screen time. You can go here, whatever it needs to do to sort of front load them actually doing what it is you want them to do. That doesn't always work. Kids might not like anything or want to do anything. If it's on the more consequence end, we can do job-based grounding is something. If they're not complying with things that we need them to comply with, then having them do more tasks, make it uncomfortable for them so that they actually will want to do what we want them to do or what they need to do. And so, it's not, another thing is taking away privileges, right? If you can't do what you're expected to do and can't take responsibility, then you don't get something. If that's keys to the car for the week, like you have to have someone take you. I don't know. There's a lot of different, scenarios that we could go through with that. At the end of the day, doing some of, benefit of the doubt, giving them the expectation, consistently reinforcing the positive behavior you want to see, rewarding that, and ignoring some of the behaviors that might not be what we want, that aren't so extreme that they need a consequence, but maybe they just get in the way.
I know for me, and I agree with Chris, teenagers, oh my gosh, but something. But I would say that my son had an educational mentor. He had somebody at school that he could talk to other than myself. Because sometimes when mama says it, I can say it till I'm blue in the face. But when someone else says it, then, oh, yeah, someone told me that. I'm thinking, I told you that. But yeah, he had an educational mentor. He had a Saturday group friends that had similar diagnoses. They all were falling on the spectrum. So it makes it a norm to go and talk to people because my friends are talking to people. And I, tell them, it's like an arm that's invisible. Nobody else can see, but it's there. You need to talk to somebody, and it's okay, to do so. You talk to your friends, yeah. Talk to your education mentor, yeah. Okay, no problem. The same thing here. And so I just think it's really a parent's job to listen and to be open and to find opportunities and tell the child just to try things out and let's see how that goes.
Yes, great advice and great questions, everyone. So, if you happen to be watching this live later on, maybe later tonight or in the next few days, and you have a remaining question on ADHD, go ahead and you can either leave it in the comments below this video or message our page privately, and I will happily pass it along to Chris and Bridget and get you the help you need. But also, additionally, like they mentioned, we do have our Common Sense Parenting classes as well as our Behavioral Health Clinic, and both of those are linked in the comments if you want to check those out and sign up for a class or request an appointment directly.
Oh, and don't forget parenting.org. You can go up there at any point in time and ask questions of the experts or download some articles or watch videos.
Or even if you just go to parenting.org and search ADHD, it will all come up, and we'll link that as well too. So lots of links, but lots of good things. So Bridget and Chris, thank you so much for your expertise and for all of the wisdom that you shared on this chat today.
You bet. It was a pleasure.
It's great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. We will be live next month on Effective Praise. Bridget will be joining us as well as a Boys Town pediatrician. So we will make sure to post about that. And we look forward to chatting with you soon. Have a good one.